Imagine a global superpower quietly fueling its ascent, not by brute force or open declarations, but by masterfully sidestepping the economic rules set by its chief rival. What if secretive energy deals, conducted far from the public eye and away from the negotiating tables, could upend the delicate balance of world trade and tip the scales of global power in the 21st century? As the spotlight intensifies on the simmering standoff between the United States and China, a new and largely unseen front has emerged, one that doesn't play out in press conferences or at official summits, but in the labyrinthine world of oil tankers, shadow fleets, and intricate paper trails. Are we witnessing the dawn of a new economic order, or the unraveling of a system that has underpinned decades of global prosperity? To truly grasp the magnitude of this unfolding drama, we need to step back and trace the roots of the United States-China relationship. A complex tapestry woven from threads of cooperation and competition. Since the final decades of the 20th century, these two giants have been bound together by an ever-deepening economic interdependence. American corporations, drawn by China's vast labor force and manufacturing prowess, shifted production overseas, enabling them to deliver affordable goods to American consumers. Meanwhile, Chinese exporters reaped the rewards of access to the world's largest consumer market, fueling an economic miracle that lifted hundreds of millions out of poverty. Yet beneath the surface of prosperity, frictions have always simmered. Trade imbalances became a persistent source of tension, with the United States running annual deficits that reached hundreds of billions of dollars. Accusations of intellectual property theft, forced technology transfers, and opaque regulatory practices dogged the relationship. Differing economic philosophies, capitalist dynamism versus state-led development, fueled suspicion on both sides. The situation reached a boiling point in the late 2010s, when the Trump administration imposed sweeping tariffs on a vast array of Chinese goods. Beijing responded in kind, targeting American exports from soybeans to aircraft. In a matter of months, global supply chains that had once seemed unshakable were thrown into disarray. International companies, from automakers to electronics giants, scrambled to adapt, rerouting production and absorbing higher costs. The era of unfettered globalization had ended, replaced by an age of uncertainty and strategic rivalry. But while the world's attention was riveted on the tariff wars and headline-grabbing trade talks, a parallel and arguably more consequential battle was brewing beneath the surface: the struggle for energy security. China, having surpassed the United States as the world's largest energy consumer, found itself facing a dilemma. Its relentless growth, fueled by urbanization and a burgeoning middle class, demanded ever-increasing supplies of oil. Yet the sources of this vital resource were increasingly under threat from American and European sanctions. In its quest for affordable and secure energy, Beijing forged partnerships with countries the United States and its allies deemed pariahs: Iran and Russia. Both nations were subject to some of the most stringent sanctions regimes ever imposed, intended to curtail nuclear ambitions, punish geopolitical adventurism, and enforce international norms. For Iran, the sanctions sought to rein in its nuclear program and regional activities. For Russia, they were a response to actions in Ukraine and elsewhere. Yet China, prioritizing its own energy security, chose to maintain and even deepen economic ties with both. As Erica Downs, an energy expert at Columbia University, puts it, China's pursuit of energy security overrides concerns about United States sanctions, making it a reliable partner for Iran and Russia. By the year 2024, China's oil imports from Russia had surged by over 1/5 compared to the average of the prior 5 years, climbing to more than 2 million barrels per day. For Iran, the situation was even more dramatic. Nearly 9/10 of its oil exports were now destined for China, much of it routed through elaborate ship-to-ship transfers in international waters and concealed by complex shipping arrangements designed to evade detection. The stakes in this shadowy trade are enormous. For the United States and its European allies, these flows undermine the effectiveness of sanctions, emboldening regimes that they seek to isolate. Officials like Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent have voiced mounting frustration, and in 2025, the United States took the unprecedented step of sanctioning a major Chinese petrochemical company for purchasing more than $138 million worth of Iranian oil. The message was clear: Washington was prepared to extend its enforcement efforts into the heart of China's energy industry. Europe, too, has not been immune to the fallout. In July 2025, the European Union imposed fresh sanctions on 2 Chinese banks and 5 firms with links to Russia, drawing fierce protests from Beijing. The move highlighted the increasingly global nature of the dispute, with European policymakers caught between their economic interests and their commitments to transatlantic security. The ripple effects are felt far beyond the corridors of power. International companies now face rising compliance costs, greater legal uncertainty, and the constant risk of being caught in the crossfire. Faced with mounting pressure from the West, China has responded with a dual strategy. On the one hand, it has introduced a raft of blocking laws and countermeasures designed to shield its companies from foreign penalties. These measures, reminiscent of European responses to American extraterritorial sanctions in previous decades, signal Beijing's determination to defend its sovereignty and economic interests. On the other hand, China is racing to develop its own renewable energy industries at an unprecedented pace, seeking both to reduce its reliance on imported oil and to position itself as a global leader in green technology. Jacob Gunter, an analyst at the Mercator Institute for China Studies, observes, China's renewable energy ambitions are not just about climate change. They're also about building a globally competitive green tech industry. Indeed, China's investments in solar, wind, and battery technologies have already made it the world's largest producer of renewable energy equipment. By the year 2025, its installed green energy capacity is projected to exceed 1,200 gigawatts, surpassing even the most optimistic government targets. This explosive growth gives Beijing a powerful new lever in future energy showdowns, and it is reshaping the global landscape in ways that few could have predicted even a decade ago. But here's the real flashpoint. Can China continue to juggle its insatiable appetite for oil, its strategic partnerships with sanctioned states, and the rising tide of Western sanctions without sparking a broader crisis? If Washington chooses to escalate, could the world be plunged into a new era of targeted sanctions, economic warfare, and tit-for-tat reprisals? Or will the global market adapt, finding new equilibrium points and workarounds that the architects of the old order never imagined? The answer, as always in geopolitics, is uncertain. But experts agree that the stakes have never been higher. Edward Fishman of the Atlantic Council warns, the United States needs a more comprehensive strategy to address China's sanctions evasion, including targeting key nodes in the shadow shipping network. Meanwhile, Agatha Kratz from the Rhodium Group notes that the European Union's approach to China needs to balance economic engagement with a firm stance on issues like trade imbalances and human rights. The result is a world in flux, where the old certainties are fading and new risks and opportunities are emerging. So what are the possible futures as China walks this razor's edge between its energy ambitions and mounting Western pressure? Let's dive deeper into the scenarios that analysts and policymakers are debating right now. The first path is what many call a strained détente. In this scenario, the United States and China managed to avoid an all-out trade war, but the rivalry continues to intensify in other arenas. American policymakers focus on ramping up targeted sanctions against specific Chinese entities, especially those linked to the murky business of sanctions-busting oil and shadow shipping. China, in turn, retaliates with its own blocking laws, countermeasures, and legal innovations to shield its firms. The European Union, caught between its economic interests and its security commitments, finds itself pulled into the crossfire, with European companies forced to navigate an ever more complex web of rules and restrictions. For international businesses, this world is one of mounting compliance costs, legal uncertainty, and constant geopolitical risk. Companies must invest heavily in due diligence, risk assessment, and supply chain diversification to avoid falling afoul of conflicting regulations. Daniel Yergin of IHS Markit sums it up. Geopolitical risks are making the global energy market more fragmented and volatile than ever. The result is a less efficient, more brittle global economy, where even minor shocks can reverberate with unexpected force. But there is a second, even more transformative possibility: the acceleration of technological decoupling and green competition. In this future, the United States and China double down on their efforts to outpace each other in critical technologies, semiconductors, artificial intelligence, quantum computing, electric vehicles, and above all, renewable energy. The world begins to split into two competing technological spheres, each with its own standards, supply chains, and innovation ecosystems. Imagine a world where the smartphone in your hand, the car you drive, and even the solar panels on your roof are built around either an American-centric or a Chinese-centric ecosystem. Cross-border cooperation in technology slows, but competition fuels a massive wave of innovation. Both countries pour unprecedented resources into research and development, seeking to dominate the industries of the future. As Jacob Gunter notes, China's green tech ambitions are about more than climate. They're a bid for global leadership. The race to reinvent clean energy and digital infrastructure could reshape the rules of the global economy for decades to come. This decoupling is already visible in the semiconductor sector, where both sides are investing billions in domestic production. In artificial intelligence, the United States leads in foundational research, while China excels in deployment and application, particularly in surveillance and consumer technology. In green energy, China's dominance in solar manufacturing and battery technology is forcing the West to rethink its own industrial policies. The competition is fierce, but it also holds the promise of breakthroughs that could benefit the entire world, if managed wisely. And then, there is a third scenario, one that many still hope for, even as the odds seem long. A breakthrough in multilateral cooperation, especially on the twin challenges of climate change and energy security. In this future, the United States and China recognize that their shared threats, rising global temperatures, volatile oil markets, and the risk of catastrophic supply disruptions, demand cooperation, not confrontation. Under this scenario, the world's two largest economies agree to limited but meaningful teamwork. They might share best practices and data on renewable energy deployment, collaborate on clean technology research, or even coordinate efforts to stabilize oil prices. Such cooperation would not erase their underlying rivalry, but it could provide a foundation for managing disputes and preventing crises. As history has shown, from the United States-Soviet arms control agreements during the Cold War to the joint response to the 2008 financial crisis, adversaries can find common ground when the stakes are high enough. Of course, achieving this level of cooperation would require a significant shift in political will and a recognition of shared interests. Domestic politics, ideological differences, and mutual suspicion remain formidable obstacles. Yet, as the costs of confrontation mount, the incentives for collaboration may become too powerful to ignore. So why does any of this matter for you, the viewer, the worker, the business owner, the student, or the traveler, far from the negotiation tables in Beijing or Washington? The reality is that the drama unfolding between the United States, China, and their partners has direct and immediate consequences for people everywhere. When China hedges its bets and the West responds with new sanctions, the resulting shocks ripple through global supply chains, affect fuel prices at the pump, and even impact the cost and availability of everyday products, from smartphones and laptops to clothing and cars. Energy markets have never been more tightly linked to geopolitics. Volatility in trade or energy policy can shake everything from your investment portfolio to your job prospects. Understanding these power games is not just an academic exercise. It's a practical necessity in a world where economic shocks can cross borders in seconds. For businesses, the new reality demands agility and resilience. Companies that invest in diversifying their supply chains, developing new partnerships, and embracing green technologies will be best positioned to weather the storms ahead. Those that cling to old models of efficiency and cost-cutting may find themselves exposed to sudden disruptions and escalating compliance costs. International trade is no longer merely a matter of price and quality. It's a labyrinth of legal, political, and ethical considerations. For individuals, the opportunities and the risks are equally profound. As the world fractures into rival tech and energy blocks, the winners will be those who can adapt quickly and spot new angles. Learning skills in renewable energy, data science, international trade law, or supply chain management could prove invaluable in the years ahead. The rise of green industries will create millions of new jobs, from engineering and manufacturing to logistics and finance. Meanwhile, understanding the basics of global economics and geopolitics can help you make smarter decisions, whether you're investing for retirement, planning a career change, or simply booking your next vacation. There are also lessons for governments and policymakers. As the traditional pillars of the global order wobble, the need for creative and adaptive leadership has never been greater. Policymakers must balance the imperatives of national security, economic growth, and environmental sustainability, all while navigating a landscape defined by uncertainty and rapid change. The choices made in the next few years about sanctions, trade policy, technology standards, and climate cooperation will shape the world our children inherit. But can China keep up this high-wire act, balancing its vast appetite for energy, its strategic partnerships, and its technological ambitions, without triggering a deeper crisis? For now, the answer appears to be yes, but only just. China's sheer size, economic dynamism, and state-driven model give it formidable staying power. Its domestic crude oil production, averaging over 4 million barrels per day, helps cushion the impact of external shocks. Its investments in alternative energy, infrastructure, and global supply chains provide additional resilience. Yet every new sanction, every new countermeasure, chips away at the old world order and raises the stakes for all involved. The risk of a sudden rupture, a miscalculation, a diplomatic incident, or a new geopolitical flashpoint remains ever present, particularly with elections and leadership transitions looming in key countries. Behind China's growing confidence lies a little-known secret: its explosive rise in renewable energy. By the year 2025, China's installed green energy capacity is set to surpass 1,200 gigawatts, a figure that dwarfs the total capacity of most countries and positions Beijing as the undisputed leader in the global energy transition. Massive solar farms stretch for miles across the Gobi Desert, while offshore wind turbines rise along the coast, powering whole regions and reducing dependence on imported oil. The country's dominance in battery production and electric vehicles is driving down costs worldwide, accelerating the shift to a cleaner, more sustainable future. If you want to understand the next great competition, look less at oil pipelines and tanker routes, and more at the sprawling solar farms, cutting-edge battery factories, and artificial intelligence-powered grids that are emerging across Eurasia. The battle for economic supremacy in the 21st century will be fought not just over barrels of oil, but over terabytes of data, gigawatts of clean power, and the ability to innovate at scale. So what can you do to navigate this era of uncertainty and transformation? First, stay informed. The world is changing faster than ever, and knowledge is your best defense against volatility. Second, be adaptable. Whether you're running a business, building a career, or making personal investments, flexibility and openness to new ideas will be key. Third, seek out opportunities in the green economy. The shift to renewable energy and sustainable technologies is not just a trend, it's the new foundation of global growth. Finally, remember that the choices we make, individually and collectively, matter. Economic warfare is getting smarter, more targeted, and more complex. The global order is poised for an overhaul, but it's not predetermined. Governments, companies, and ordinary people all have a role to play in shaping what comes next. If you found this breakdown valuable, hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our deep dives into global economics and technology. And let us know in the comments, do you believe the United States and China can cooperate on energy and climate? Or are we headed for a permanent split? Your view could be part of our next episode. Until next time.